packing fills me with dread, especially for travel photography. Batteries and SD cards. Do I bring every lens I own? Sony's flagship 35mm f1.4 G Master. The sharpest detail coupled with the creamiest bokeh. Quick and silent autofocus. Every button, switch and ring you could want right on the lens. Weather sealed gaskets to protect it against rain, dirt and dust. All this and more in a small compact form factor which will take you from day to night without missing a beat. It's supposed to be a perfect lens, but I absolutely hated it when it first came out. My name is Jack and I'm a scientist and street photographer. Photography is not my job, but it's my tool of choice for mental well-being. In the past 4 weeks, how often did you feel tired out for no reason? In the past 4 weeks, how often did you feel nervous? Sure, I can just shoot with my iPhone, but image quality aside, the default lens on most phones, 24mm, is just a little too wide. To me, 35mm is the sweet spot. A 35mm lens is just wide enough to get enough of the scene without distorting most of the people or lines in that scene, so it's really versatile. Most people think it's great for travel photography, especially when you're in tight, compressed spaces like in Japan and Tokyo. Crowded subway stations, tight alleyways, dizzying layers of walkways and crossings, all against the backdrop of historic landmarks. All of this called for wider lenses to capture everything that's going on. Lost in that urge to shoot everything all at once are the quieter moments, individual acts of kindness, the dedication needed from every cleaner, taxi driver, and train conductor just to keep things running on time. Omotenashi. Service without expecting anything in return, an emblem of what makes Japanese culture stand out on the global stage. Trying to capture the core truth of Japan with a 35mm lens is tough. But as the famous wartime photographer Robert Caput says, if your pictures aren't good enough, then you're not close enough. But getting close with 35mm can cause a lot of anxiety. Anxiety is the world's most common mental disorder, affecting 301 million people in 2019. But only 1 in 4 of those people receive any type of treatment whatsoever. Talking to a therapist or psychologist is the best and only way really of treating anxiety disorders, but self-care plays a really important role too. In the past 4 weeks, how often did you feel nervous? So nervous that nothing would calm you down? Hopeless? Unfortunately, anxiety and creativity are strange bedfellows. You need the right amount of nervous tension to launch your artistic vision, but uncertainty can just as quickly poison your self-worth. In the past 4 weeks, how often did you feel depressed? That everything was an effort? So sad that nothing would cheer you up. I bought this lens on launch day back in 2020 because it's supposed to be the best. All the early reviews said how light and compact it was. It really isn't all that light actually. 525 grams, but the weight is distributed awkwardly, with the ½ kilogram weight being quite front heavy across the lens barrel. Carrying it around on a shoulder strap made me bump it into doorknobs and cupboard corners. While I've gotten used to it over the years, I still wish this lens was a little bit more balanced in hand. Don't get me wrong, the image quality is amazing, but I just didn't like any of the shots I was getting from it. Turns out, of course, it wasn't the lens's fault, it was me. And a bit of having an f1.4 aperture like this 35mm f1.4 G Master is that at night, you could really lower that ISO and get a really clean shot. This is a nighttime scene of an alleyway in Kyoto, Japan, trying to capture a passenger riding a bicycle down this alleyway in the kind of classic street photography cliche at ISO 6400, and I've captured it with a shutter speed of 1/125th of a second. You can see that it's relatively sharp, but you can see there's grain coming in because this is ISO 6400. 1/125th of a second I think is already too slow. And if I raise the shutter speed to 1/250th of a second, the ISO would be 12,800. If my lens was f1.8 or f2, the ISO would pretty much go beyond 12,800, which really is a natural limit, not just in the camera that I use, the Sony a7CR, but in most modern mirrorless cameras, you wouldn't really want to go above ISO 12,800, so having an f1.4 lens really is very powerful in this kind of scene. With wide-angle lenses, it's hard to get background separation and get that blurry background, that bokeh, so the f1.4 will let you create a bit more mystery in the shots. I'm standing about 2 to 3 meters behind this pedestrian on this famous Ueno crossing. I've gotten a fair amount of the scene behind him, as well as all of the people you can see just a little bit blurred out, little je ne sais quoi of cinematic feel, wide enough to get most of the scene. The corners aren't distorted because it's 35mm, it's not 24 or 16mm. This kind of crazy environment where there's all these ultra warp lines and you can see these buildings up ahead. It's very tempting to go use the ultra wide lens like a 16 to 35, but a 35mm is just the perfect balance of just wide enough to capture mostly what you want without trying to exclude too many things from the frame, giving that very pleasing, normal looking, straight lines, non-distorted perspective That's why it's a really good choice for architecture as well. The 35mm G Master from Sony has excellent autofocus, that kind of goes without saying. A bird in flight over some power lines, zoom right in, bird is super sharp. You can also see while I'm here zoomed in that the power lines, if you drag it around, no real evidence of chromatic aberration or green or purple fringing, so that's really great. Another example of this is at this train station scene in Tokyo. There's some blown out highlights here. If I zoom in, usually with blown out highlights, if the lens has some chromatic aberration, some fringing, you'll see it in the blown out areas. Here, maybe a tinge of green here, but there's not much purple. Overall, it's very manageable in the blown out areas. I don't see too much evidence of CA. Just a touch, very well managed, especially for an f1.4 aperture. The other reason you want to go for an f1.4 aperture for a 35mm lens is you can use it to whichever creative application you want. Something in the foreground that's blurred out or sharp, something in the background that's a little bit distant. It's wide enough to get those layers. You can make the foreground quite blurry, like this nighttime photo in Kyoto of a taxi, and there's some foreground blue light posts here, these street posts, and you can see this layering, this sense of depth in image. The same you can see in the next one, the scaffolding late at night in Kyoto, and it's just peeking in, and as you zoom in, you see super sharp on the cat, all the details of the fur, all of these layers of depth in the foreground of the pavement, a little bit out of focus, the mid-level, the cat, the street lamp, and of course in the distance, the background, the oncoming lights of a car, giving this nice bokeh, again quite round and smooth. And this last shot I'll show you is a classic 35mm Japan street photography shot. Enough leading lines across this alleyway. You get a bit of the foreground here that's just a bit out of focus. You get this person to try to focus on in the distance that is nice and sharp. You can see just a little bit fading off the distance. The distance is just a little bit blurry. Layers, this is why you get the 35mm f1.4. Everything was an effort. So sad that nothing would cheer you up. The biggest reason I hated the 35mm G Master 4 years ago was the anxiety I associated with street photography. I'm no Bruce Gilden and I didn't like shooting up close. I was still developing my visual aesthetic and my own anxiety and insecurities were projected onto this lens. In the past 4 weeks, how often did you feel worthless? Sure, I can get into landscape or astrophotography where there are no people whatsoever, but my genre is street. I studied the masters, Daido Moriyama, Sol Leiter, Alan Schaller, and learn how to preserve a sense of mystery in each frame. Each of these scenarios are difficult to shoot. Quick moving subjects in low light conditions. This is why I've come to value the autofocus and the f1.4 aperture so much. Each time out shooting was another rep to confront my creative roadblock. My mental state while out on the streets got better. So yes, I think it's totally worth money, but you know what I actually value the most about it? This is the lens that made me figure out my favorite focal length, not 35mm, and so began the hunt for my favorite lens of all time. You'll find that video linked here when it's ready to go. I'm Jack, trying to capture peace in each moment.